here.
Okay, awesome. Let's get started. We're happy to see you all here. My name is Madeline and this is Nick. We are both debate sophomore. So we just kind of went through this college process. And so we kind of wanted to talk about the way that debate can be used as a tool on the application and kind of all parts of the college process. So it's important to kind of note that Nick and I kind of use debate differently. So, Nick was the TOC winner, so he really utilized debate as a strong focus in his application. He wrote his Common App essay about debate, and I used more of debate as a supplement. I didn't really focus on it in my application, but I kind of just used it to accentuate other parts of my application. So it kind of shows that you can really use debate as a continuum for your application. You don't have to make it your sole focus, and if you don't want to, you don't have to talk about it, but it can be a very, very great resource to kind of demonstrate your aptability to be in certain colleges, especially really high-level colleges.
So before we dive into sort of the nuts and bolts of what we wanted to talk about, there's sort of two important things that we wanted to preface our message with. So the first being is that while debate can be a very valuable tool on your application, you should not overdo it, right? So if you're writing one Common App essay and maybe two supplements, you should really only have one essay that's dedicated to debate. If you think that it fits into two, I think that you can do that. You can have two essays that mention debate, but it is essential that you focus on different aspects of debate that we'll sort of highlight later on in the elective. So I would just be very cautious of using debate too much, because you want to sort of portray yourself in a positive light, show the college what they're missing out if they don't accept you, and just demonstrate a persuasive reason for why they should accept you to their university. The second thing, and I think that this is important for the entire college process, regardless of if you're writing about debate, applying to a debate school, etc., is always think about show, not tell. And what I mean by that is that you should not be telling the admissions office what it is that you are good at, but rather showing them the skills that you have acquired that demonstrate a reason for why they should admit you. So one of the things that we're going to talk about a little bit later is that debate provides very valuable research skills that are super important when you get to college. So instead of saying something like, I spent 6 weeks at debate camp, so I am a good researcher, you should think about showing them how you're a good researcher. So things like, during my 6 weeks at the Dartmouth Debate Institute, I used Dartmouth, level college library resources, like legal libraries like LexisNexis, et cetera, sort of talking about the research process that you engaged in, rather than just making claims like, I'm a good researcher, I'm a good public speaker, et cetera.
The other kind of thing, so I guess this is the third kind of top level thing that we want to talk about, is the way to use debate to your advantage. So debate, especially now that lots of people are doing it over the country, is not really a novel extracurricular. And what I mean by that is when an admissions office at a college is looking at either your resume or your application, just saying that you do policy debate is not going to have that wow factor that it might have had maybe 10 years ago. And this is not a reason not to use debate, but it's something really important to think about, is like just saying I do college level research may not get the point across that you're really an important person that really needs to be admitted to this college. And so it's also another kind of way to think about using debate to your advantage, is that you want to distinguish yourself from other types of debaters. So I feel like in the policy debate community, we're kind of very aware that we are the best debate forum because of the amount of work that we have to put in, the depth and kind of breadth of argument research that we have to get into. But you need to be sure that you're illustrating your differences from a debater who does POFO and just says that they like to argue with their parents, right? So those are also important considerations when you're framing the way that debate has really made an impact on you.
Great. And so a couple more things. First is that when you are thinking about your essay in general, you want to sort of talk about debate not in terms of an event that's in your past. So it's like, all of you are high schoolers. Debate is obviously very important to you, considering that you're at this camp. You invested a lot of time into it, and it was probably a big or significant portion of your high school career. And so some of you will probably want to continue debate in college on a policy debate team, but others, may not go to a school that has a policy debate team or may not want to do debate in college. And whatever the case is, it is essential that you sort of demonstrate to the college that you're sort of debate skills that you've acquired are lifelong and will continue throughout sort of your process as growing up, maturing, and then also at the college, right? So it's like, you don't want to portray yourself as someone who loved debate in high school, but you know, you're not going to debate in college anymore. So if that's the case, you need to sort of explain how you'll use the debate skills that you acquired in high school on a college campus, whether that's engaging with professors, taking on research assignments, engaging with peers, etc. One last thing is that competitive success should not be a focus of your essay, but instead it could be sort of a small tidbit. Instead, like mainly you want to focus on sort of the aspects of debate that changed you as a person, not winning a tournament, right? So it's like the best way that I've seen this executed is if you want to mention competitive success, that's great, but it shouldn't exceed 1 to 2 sentences in a substantial essay. The biggest reason for this is that they're going to see your sort of competitive record on other aspects of the Common App, right? So you have your activities list, you have additional information, things like that. And it's also like, they don't really care what you like winning a tournament did for you, right? It's like, they're much more invested in sort of the ways the debate changed you as a person and what you took out of the activity. So now what we're going to go do is sort of talk about the way that you should craft an essay if you want to write about debate. So we've identified 5 different themes. If you sort of are like, I know that I want to write an essay about debate, but I don't really know where to start. You know, I have some ideas. We have sort of chatted and identified 5 different sort of routes that you can investigate and some suggestions there. So Madeline is going to start us off.
So the first is academic, right? So debate has changed me or made me think in a more academic way. So kind of subsets to this are research, which Nick has already kind of touched on the ways that you could kind of craft or begin talking about research. Another is persuasion or public speaking. So the way that debate either gave you persuasion or public speaking skills or allowed you to use the skills that you learned in debate to persuade someone outside of debate. A few kind of tidbits to this, we really should not be mentioning spreading because spreading is not public speaking. And it's like, you know, the people who are reading your application are probably like 50-year-old people, and so, or maybe a little younger, but it's like, they're not going to be wowed or impressed that like we can speak so fast. That like, that is not really the same as like public speaking in their minds. Other kind of possible routes is like, what makes a good argument? How can you use evidence / let the research guide you? I always really talked about that, is that I learned how to formulate opinions by instead looking at what expert says in order to find an opinion rather than trying to make my own opinions without this like evidence to back it up. That's kind of an example of how I wrote about how debate changed the way that I think. How to persuade a judge that your argument is correct, even if you're not on the right side of an argument, right? That takes a lot of skill and is a practice that we don't really do in real life. And just the way that debate has challenged your beliefs in kind of any fashion. So that's kind of an academic, some kind of themes that could help you get started. And the way that I would kind of think about this is it's like, I know that especially writing the college essay can feel very stressful about like, what should I write about? And so it's really just like, if any of these kind of feel interesting to you, or if you want to write them down as like kind of sentences or a few sentences that you could write about in your supplements, that is probably the best way to kind of go about this. The next kind of theme is social. So how did debate change either your socialization or the way that you interact with others? So one thing that I kind of thought about was identity relations. So it's like, right, debate, we talk a lot about identity, be that race, gender, sexual orientation, immigration status. And so this is just something that I was thinking about. So like, let's say that you wanted to talk about race in your application. If you're white, you could talk about the difficult conversations that you had, hearing new perspectives, especially it's like, for me, I grew up in Portland, Oregon, which is majority white. And so debate can kind of give you an avenue to listen to other perspectives in a way that is very different from what it's like to like hear it on social media. And also just being confronted with your prejudice. If you're non-white, you can talk about discrimination in the debate community, learning about praxis to inform your relationship to the non-debate community, or just finding a safe space or home. Those are all possible avenues that you could take as a starting off point to write your essay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like, I definitely retweet the sort of things like debate is incredibly diverse in terms of argument, and especially in terms of people, right? Depending on where you come from, it might be a completely different experience from, you know, living in South Florida or, you know, Portland, right? And it's like, that might be something similar that you experience when you get to college. It's like colleges pride themselves on having a diverse community of learners and people sort of engaging in one shared space. If you, under the sort of category of social, I think that you could also talk about the debate, like other aspects of the debate community that sort of talk about socialization or sort of connecting with peers or mentors. So one thing is like, you have a team, right? It's like you're constantly collaborating with individuals on your team. Some of them might be older, so you have maybe someone that you look up to as a role model or mentor. What did you learn from them? Or something that I think could be super neat is writing about people younger on you than your team, right? That's like you sort of taught them, you watched them grow, sort of saw things in the teaching process, illustrated things that you were doing correctly. It allowed you to learn like different aspects about yourself, sort of the role of teaching and how that is important. I also think that the debate community can be super interesting in terms of there are some really, really smart people that you're surrounding yourselves with, particularly some of your coaches or the people that you might even be engaging with at this camp. So, if you have this you hit it off with one of your instructors, or you had a really great relationship with one of your coaches, and it's like they inspired you to do something like have a change of, academic mindset, or inspire you to take action on this particular issue. I think that could be super interesting to sort of tie debate into that. The next section, so this would be number 3, and I think that this one is sort of super interesting, and it's sort of what I would classify as like the 2&C trick to your writing your college application here, is overcoming challenges. So for those of you who might have had maybe a rough start to college or to high school, and it's like maybe your transcript wasn't exactly what you wanted it to be, right? So it's maybe freshman year you had some grades that you weren't particularly proud of, you don't think that they reflected on your like academic abilities. You can use the sort of debate essay in a couple of ways to sort of demonstrate to the admissions department that you are this academically motivated person. So I'll sort of give 2 examples of this, and obviously depending on your circumstances, you'd use this differently. So the first one that I think is helpful is like, take the example of someone who had a tough freshman year. The transition to high school was very tough for them, and it's like maybe their grades weren't exactly what they wanted them to be. You could craft an essay that's like, in high school, this transition from middle school to high school was rough. You didn't really find your passion. You didn't have like your niche on campus. But then what happened is you found debate, and you surrounded yourself with a bunch of very smart people. You were now conducting a lot of academic research. You were thinking critically about arguments. And what that did is it sort of allowed you to understand the importance of schoolwork, and that sort of allowed you to improve your grades as you sort of invested more in debate. So I think that that's one way that you can sort of explain out some of the problems that you might have on your transcript. Another thing, this one I think is less useful and maybe not as persuasive, but is something that you can add in, is maybe a sentence or 2 about the time that you spend dedicated to debate, and sort of a way that differentiates yourself from your peers. So something like, well, all of my peers are, at home on a weekend, not doing anything or studying for the SAT or doing homework, whatever. I'm halfway across the country, waking up at 6:30 in the morning to talk about international relations between the United States and China, right? It's like that's sort of a sentence or 2 that you can throw in there to sort of demonstrate your commitment to this activity and how much of a time suck it was on why you may not have been able to do other things in high school. The 4th section of sort of the essay that I think that you could focus on is camp. So camp is a super unique experience because, of course, many of your peers who aren't in debate will have summer camps that they go to, right? And it's like, but nothing is going to be comparable really to a debate camp other than like one of the like academically minded camps that are also on college campuses, right? And it's like, you are dedicating a large portion of your time to working with, college employees, working with the college library, working with college students, sort of engaging in a way that's very similar to a college experience. And you should sort of try to draw comparisons between, your time at debate camp and how you could sort of see yourself in college, right? And I know it's a little tough now given that everything's online. But so if you're applying to a school that's like so say you're applying to Dartmouth and you were lucky enough to go to the DDI last year, I think that talking about camp when you're writing a like Dartmouth specific essay could be a great way to sort of add some like mild humor or something to spice your essay up a little bit and differentiate itself from the rest of your peers that are applying, right? So it's like, if you were at DDI last year, the pain of living in the chotes for 6 weeks during the summer, right? And it's like, that's like a sentence or 2 that you can throw in that might sort of demonstrate a little bit of your personality, some of your character. It might show the admissions, officer that you're serious about the school that you're applying to. The sort of final category that I would suggest thinking about in terms of like what you can write your debate essay about is giving back, right? So it's like, how did debate change you and give you opportunities for volunteer experience, starting your own sort of volunteer program? I think that there are a lot of different ways this is possible, right? So is it like, did researching about climate change cause you to start this environmental club at your school? You know, did researching about a different issue make you super passionate, and now that's the thing that you want to study in college and you want to make your career about that, right? And it's like, even some of the smaller things that you might do on a day-to-day basis that don't seem super big to you could really be, you know, very significant in a college essay, right? So it's like, many of you juniors and seniors, you probably have younger students on your team. So it's like, to you, mentoring novices on Monday and Wednesday may not be that big of a deal, but you can sort of craft your essay in a way that makes it seem very powerful, and sort of what you're doing is very good work for your school's community and sort of helping the lives of others, right? And like, this is probably the area where I'd say that like fabrication to some extent is okay, if not encouraged. And it's like, you know, like, you may not think that the like hour that you spend after school is like helpful in terms of like, you know, you're teaching novices how to read pieces of evidence, right? But it's like, the admissions officer wants to hear the story from your perspective, and you can sort of beef it up in a way that makes it look like you're really taking this seriously and it's something that you really care about.
Yeah, definitely. So now what we're going to talk about is the different kind of areas of a college application, and the kind of ways that you can tailor debate and talk about debate in each of these. So just like a brief overview, we're going to talk about the Common App essay. We're going to talk about the activity section, the supplement section, and then it's like a specific college supplement. So doing a brief overview for the essay, because I didn't write my essay about debate, but it's like an important just to kind of think about regardless, is the main concept of the essay is that it serves two purposes. One is, who are you? And two is, how do you think, or what do you think is important? So your essay should be answering these questions, even if the theme is about debate. And so it's really important, and I think that this is what a lot of people sometimes either get wrong or don't focus on, is your essay is supposed to be about you, right? So it's like, if I had a great, like, let's say Nick and I were partners in high school, and he was just like really amazing, he wowed me, and I wrote my essay about how inspiring he was and how cool he was and how much stuff he did. It's like, the college admissions officers don't want to hear about Nick, they want to hear about me, right? So the way that you can frame this, if you want to write about someone in debate, is talking about how that person changed you, how that person changed the way you think, right? But you really want to make sure that your essay is about you. The next thing is, you don't want this to be a revelation, right? So like, I learned how to solve racism after I answered Afro-pessimism, right? It's like, that is not kind of what your essay is going to be able to do, because that's just not true. So instead, you wanted to frame it as either an instance of learning that could be applied to how you see the world, or just a way that your brain operates. So it should also be important that someone who knows what policy debate is should find your essay interesting, and someone who doesn't know what policy debate is should find your essay interesting. So it's that kind of line to walk of knowing that debate isn't necessarily a wow factor, but still being able to utilize the really awesome benefits of debate in a way that demonstrates your interest and applicability to the college. The last thing is that your essay should be a story. So it can be a fictional story. My story was like pretty fictional, like it didn't actually happen. But right, it's the way that you tell the story is the reason why the college admissions want to read it. So you should have a theme, motifs is really helpful, and a central focus on you. So it either happened to you or the story is about how an incident impacted you.
Yeah, I agree. Very, very nice way of putting that. And so sort of additional things, this is going to be maybe a little bit more practical in terms of the process of writing your college application. And it's like, so for particularly to the seniors right now, I imagine that this is something that's very stressful. And I know it was for me. I was like at debate camp before my senior year. And it's like, you know, I'm like, okay, I can like do all of this debate work. And then like, you know, the college application process will happen. And it's like, I would really recommend that you put your best foot forward and start working now. You know, it doesn't mean that you need to have your common application done before camp ends or done before the beginning of the summer. You should start thinking about what you want to write about and maybe throwing together some rough drafts, right? And it's like, the way that I see it is like, there's no problem with writing a draft that you're eventually going to scrap, right? So it's like, Madeline and I talked about 5 areas of debate that we think that you could write about. And, you know, if you're like, you know, I empathize with all of these, write 5 different versions of like that story and then see which one you sort of like the best, right? So it's like, my Common App essay is a Word document or is a Google Doc that I had that's like 28 pages, even though it's 650 words, because I like made like at least 20 different revisions to it. And I feel like that's what you're going to feel like, is you're going to be like, oh, this isn't exactly perfect. Like I could change something else, like, you know, and like that is a feeling that everyone is going to have. And the only way that you're going to be able to sort of be comfortable knowing that it's like, yes, this essay isn't perfect, but it's definitely the best that I put forward, is by getting sort of an early start to it and really taking seriously you know, the portrayal of yourself that you want to put forward. I also think that this is something that's important that I'm sure your college admissions counselors at your school, if you have some, will talk to you about. But please, 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 when you're writing your Common App, especially if it's about debate, pick one of the topics and don't just submit the like, choose a topic of your own, right? So I looked at the Common App prompts that are for the seniors upcoming. So this is 2020 to 2021, and they're actually exactly the same ones that Madeline and I had to answer. And literally every single prompt is phenomenal when it comes to debate, right? So it's like the first one is about your interests or talents that would be incomplete that would make your application incomplete if you didn't mention them. Debate seems to be pretty clear here. The second is sort of like an obstacle or failure that you accomplished and what you learned from that. Very easy to explain debate here. The next one I think is maybe even the best, a time when you questioned a belief or sort of an intellectual problem or research query that you solved, definitely super applicable to debate. An accomplishment that sparked personal growth seems very relevant to debate. And this one, which is I think could be super powerful, is an activity that makes you lose track of time. You know, like debate is an activity that cares a lot about time. So I think what Madeline was talking about in terms of writing a story, you could create some very powerful motifs relating to time, right? Time in debate, time in high school, things like that. So, you know, try to make it as personable as possible and as specific to the prompt, right? It's like if you can craft a story with the things that we've talked about that answer one of those prompts that they've sort of given to you, because that'll sort of highlight, you know, your writing skills, your ability to answer a prompt in a way that is, you know, genuine and correct.
Nick, do you want to talk a little bit about what you wrote about and how you chose what to write about for debate?
Yeah, I can do that. So I wrote my Common App essay on debate, and there were I chose two aspects of sort of the things that Madeline and I talked about before. I talked about the sort of academics part of it, and then I talked about the giving back portion. So the way that my essay is, and I'd be happy to share it with you all if you want it, the introduction paragraph is sort of painting a picture of what a debate tournament looks like in a way that was interesting to someone who didn't know about debate, and someone who did know about debate may not instantly recognize it as a debate tournament until maybe the second or third sentence, right? And then sort of I just transitioned into how debate taught me to be a critical thinker, inspired me to be passionate about particular issues, and sort of just changed the way that I generally see the world. And then my sort of second half of the essay was talking about how debate gave me a venue to give back to the community. So the thing that I did was I started an elementary school debate program at my at North Broward. So, you know, I talked about that, teaching younger kids, sort of seeing them and me, and sort of the rewarding process that is teaching younger folks. And then I ended with sort of like a conclusion that's like, I was only applying to debate schools, which is something that we're going to talk about a little bit later. So no matter what school read my Common App, I was going to be trying to be on their debate team. So I talked about continuing debate in college, continuing sort of the passions that debate had instilled in me at the college that I wanted to go to.
So that's kind of the essay, and it's like not necessarily underview, but I should have said this before, is that this essay is your best chance to show the college application, or show, I guess, the admissions people your personality, right? So it's like you're telling a story. You might be a little funny, you might be a little sassy, right? It's like that is kind of where you really want to feel like you're almost having a conversation or you're telling a story. So the next parts of the college process or the college application are less so about showing your personality, or at least it's a little bit more abridged because you don't have as much space that you do in a college essay. So the next one is the activities page. Oh, and I also slightly disagree with what Nick said above, so I wrote my Common App essay not looking at the prompts because I already knew what I wanted to write about. I wrote about female supervillains. So I just chose the last prompt because it didn't fit with any of the other ones. So if you're looking to the college prompts to see where you should start, then everything Nick said is true. But if you already know what you want to write your essay about and it doesn't fit into one of the prompts, then just choose the last one.
Yeah.
So the activities part, so this is something that my high school college counselor told me that I don't know if everyone knows is that, so the activity section of the Common App is pretty much, I think you can put 10 of your activities and you do like, you have like 150 characters to explain like debate, right? So it's like maybe like 2 sentences. But then what you can do is you can say, see additional info in that little like 150 character section. And then at the very end of the activities portion, there's like a additional info section, which is, it's like, it's very broad on the Common App. It's like, oh, if you have like additional info for your, or like additional info, you can put it here. And so what I did is then I wrote a paragraph about, I think it was like 3 of my activities that just like, you couldn't really explain in 150 characters. So that portion is where you should explain to like someone about policy debate that doesn't know what policy debate is, right? So it's like, you know, policy debate is like a very intense academic activity where we talk about like either, you could talk about the different, I don't know what the topics that you all have talked about in college, but it's like, you know, I was like, we talked about immigration, surveillance, and like China cooperation, right? It's like you travel tournaments, so you have to persuade people. Like, it's like, that's where you kind of give the like TLDR, what is debate, is in this activity section. The next, and this is also where you can highlight your competitive success. So like, as Nick said, you don't need to put that in your Common App essay, but if you want to put that in your activity section of the studio, like, I won like 2 tournaments and traveled nationally and placed, you know, in the top like 50 nationally or whatever. The next part is the supplement. So a lot of colleges will ask for a 250 word kind of conversation about an activity. So this is usually, I mean, you can kind of look to the schools that you're applying to, but I think, because I applied ED to Dartmouth, but I applied EA to a few other places, and like I applied to I think 6 schools, and like at least 3 of them had this essay supplement. So it's like, it's a very common supplement. So if you want to talk about debate here, right, that probably means you should not have been talking about debate in your essay. So that's kind of goes back to what Nick talked about, is that if you're going to talk about debate, you don't want to talk about it in every facet of your application, but only one. So if you're going to write your supplement about debate, that is where it can be less of a story because it's a little hard to fit, and just more of the, this is how debate changed me, or this is one thing I learned from debate, while kind of still showing this like kind of wow factor of like, I did so much work. So it's like, maybe you wanted to just talk about debate camp, like, you know, then that's really where you can hamp on like, you know, my friends were like playing outside, but I went 7 weeks to go to a debate camp and sit inside of a college library all day, right? Like that, like those kind of sentences, it's like what you can include in your supplement. The last kind of way that debate might kind of show up on a college application is the specific college supplement. So a lot of colleges will ask you kind of specific prompts. So it's like, Dartmouth, there was one about like why Dartmouth, and then it was like they had this random one that you could choose a prompt, and I think I chose a prompt about like knowing the heart of another or something like that. But then if you want to use debate to answer some of these, you can kind of go back to the themes that we talked about. But again, to harp, you only want to do that if you haven't talked about debate in your application yet. So just trying to be very selective and deliberate about when you use debate. So those are kind of the 4 different ways that debate might show up on your application, your essay, your activities, your supplement, or a specific college supplement. The last thing that Nick and I are going to do is kind of talk about how to use debate in other parts of the college application process that isn't just writing the Common App. So the first one is the actual interview. So usually a college interview is you're speaking with an alum that's in your area, to kind of both talk to them about the college as well as for them to kind of assess you. And this is where I should say that like, this is where you're going to be talking to someone who really does not know what policy debate is at all. So this is where the real wow, it's like if you were talking to your parent's friend about policy debate and you wanted to make yourself look really good, like this is where you're really using that in the interview process, you know? So it's like, yeah, you know, I do like, I think one of my favorite lines about debate is that like research is like applicable to a master's level thesis is the amount of research that I do in a year. Like kind of throwing that line out there is like, sounds extremely impressive. And so that is something that if you wanted to say to a college interviewer, they're going to write in their kind of assessment, like, wow, this person is so academically inclined, like they do all of this great stuff. So this is in the interview is where you should really be wowing them. And I would also say you should probably focus and emphasize the academic of all the themes that Nick and I talked about, just because, you know, that's where you're going to get the most differentiation from someone who just talked about how doing their Model UN club really helped them overcome challenges and learn how to be persuasive, right? It's like, that's where like the great part about policy debate is like how academically rigorous it is can like really help you during this interview process.
Um, so the next thing, and this is where it sort of is going to be a little bit more vague rather than like specific things that you should do. And this is just sort of like things that we think are important when considering what schools you want to apply to specifically when you're thinking about debate is you should, if you can, try to have a conversation with a debate coach at a college that you are applying to if you like really care about the debate team, right? So it's like the DDI is very fortunate in the sense that we have a lot of really, really smart coaches at like teaching you all, but also like some really powerful, people in terms of like their director of like a bunch of different programs. So, I know we have Dartmouth people, we have Emory people, we have Kentucky people, we have Georgetown people. So it's like a lot of the big name debate schools, you're going to be able to have the opportunity to work with at the DDI and also talk to. So I'm pretty sure there'll be like an admissions night for like all of these different colleges or something about debating in college. So I'm going to sort of save that conversation for later. But if it sort of comes to the fact where like, I really, really want to go to X school and like, it just so happens that your lab leader is a debate coach at that school, you should certainly feel free to like send them a Slack message just like, hey, I'm super interested in debating at this school. Like, can we talk about it, right? Because I think that it's super important to know what you're going to be getting out of the like school that you're going for, especially if it's like you're applying to the school because you want to debate in college. You should know what you're going to be ready for. So it's like, and what you'll sort of come to find out if you talk to a lot of debaters at different schools or a lot of different coaches is that different schools have their own sort of vibe and it sort of exists on a spectrum, right? It's like there are some schools where it's like, everyone is going to be able to participate no matter what in every tournament that they want to go to. Other schools might be a little bit more harsh in terms of like, we're going to make sure that the coaching goes to the best teams and that those are the ones that are going to get focused. But once you sort of pay your dues, you're going to get that opportunity to do so as well, right? The sort of spectrum also exists in terms of the amount of pull that debate coaches have in admissions, right? Like some people might be able to have a very, very significant influence on whether or not you get accepted to a college. In other places, it may be something a lot smaller, right? So it's like having a genuine discussion with someone who's employed at the college and asking them about the admissions process is something that is perhaps very intimidating. I know it was very scary for me doing it a lot of times, but I think it's very necessary for you to make sure that you have realistic expectations. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about, and this is something that I perhaps think is a mistake that I had when I went through the college process is I only wanted to go to a school that had a debate team. So I limited my college search right off the bat to like, I think it was about 7 schools that all of them had a very competitive policy debate team. And, that was the only thing that I particularly like cared about. Like I cared about academics, but like the necessity was it had to have a good debate team, right? And it's like, I think that that's super important. Like if you really, really like debate, it's important to make sure that you can continue this activity in college. But I would advise giving a school that like, sounds like it's really cool, has things that you're interested in, might be in a very nice location, even if it doesn't have a debate team, give it a chance. That's something that is probably one of my biggest regrets in the college search is like, I didn't even look at a school if I knew that they didn't have a policy debate team. And it's like, obviously there are downsides and advantages to this. It's like a big advantage of having a debate team on campus is you always will have sort of a home, an outlet that you'll find friends very easily and that you'll sort of be able to invest some sort of like competitive energy into this activity outside of schoolwork, right? But at the same time, there aren't a lot, like not every college has a policy debate team and there are so many great places that you can fit into that may not have a policy debate team. So I don't think you should like limit your application search with just that.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And so it's like Nick, as you can kind of tell, was someone who was like really focused on wanting to do debate in college and really kind of tailored his college application focus to debate. And so a kind of another aspect of that, / this is kind of going back to the continuum, right, is that I did not really go into it either. I didn't think that I was going to do debate in college. And I wanted to go to Dartmouth external to the debate program. And so the way that I kind of went about perhaps utilizing debate as a tool on my application, even though it wasn't a central focus, was like I emailed Turner. So I actually went to the DDI senior year to kind of see if I liked Dartmouth and see if I kind of liked the Dartmouth debate kind of vibe. But then before even I went to DDI, so it's like I didn't know him at all. I had emailed Turner just like, oh, I'm kind of interested in the debate program. I was wondering if we could talk about it a little bit. He sent me some kind of emails that just both outlined the way that Dartmouth does application in terms of debate, which is more of like a soft recruiting, like, you know, you're not gonna get a scholarship to do debate here, and you're not gonna like, he doesn't have significant pull with admission, so he kind of honestly talks to me about that, as well as just like what college debate is. So I found that really helpful. So even if you don't know a coach, right? So it's like, let's say that you want to go to a school that's not like Emory, and so you can't just like talk to Carmen face to face like you could here. You can still email a coach like out of the blue, and kind of just put your foot in the water. Another important thing is that you really don't have to be 100% sure that you want to do debate in college to kind of use debate as a resource with these college coaches. So I think every coach knows that, like, you know, college debate is very different from high school debate. And so they're all very understanding if you don't want to do debate in college or you kind of get there. And so you don't have to be using debate as a resource to get into college does not mean that you have to do debate in college. And it's like, you should certainly not be dishonest and like tell Turner that you love college debate so much and that's all that you want to do, and then like come to campus and never see him again, right? It's like, that's what like you don't want to do. But you can certainly, like, I know I was very honest of like, I don't think that I want to debate in college, but I may be interested in trying it, or at least like getting a little bit of that experience. And so that can also be very effective ways to utilize your experience without being dishonest, but also kind of not downplaying the impact that debate can have. And you should also think about kind of assessing your situation and the way that debate is honestly going to help you, right? So it's like, I wasn't very competitive in high school, right? It's like, I didn't go to a lot of national tournaments. I certainly didn't win the TOC. So I wasn't going to think that me doing debate was going to be a significant factor in whether or not I got to college. So that is something important to assess, just like of your own kind of high school competitiveness, as well as the size of the debate program that you want to enter into. So do you want someone that has a lot of resources, that has a lot of past competitive success, the type of coaches, as well as, and this is like a little thing that, I don't know, Nick, do you want to talk about the partner stuff just like really quickly? Because you told me about that.
Yeah. This is a really important thing. I'm sorry I missed this. Madeline, correct me if I'm wrong about what I'm about to say, but I think this is what you meant. One thing is that a lot of you, if you have like a partner that you debate with constantly at your school and you both really care about debate, and you're going to be applying to like similar schools, that means the same person is going to be reading both of your essays. And that is scary in the sense that you're technically competing against your partner. And so I think that the only way to sort of go about this, if it's like both you and your partner want to go to the same set of schools, right? And it's like, you know, in reality, it may not be the case that you can get into everyone can get into each school. You should have a like sort of honest and open conversation with your partner. I think it obviously depends on your relationship with them, that sort of talks about, you know, let different aspects of yourselves shine in the application, right? Because I feel like it'll only hurt both of you if you both write the exact same essay, which is like, you know, you talk about the exact same experiences that you had, the same mentors that taught you the same things, and maybe you both did the same volunteer program, right? So it's like having a conversation with them that's like, okay, these are the schools that I'm applying to. And if you see some overlap, you know, at least trying to put the right foot forward and being like, I'm going to try to highlight these things in my application and let you sort of take these things away so that there's some differentiation between the two of you.
Cool. So that's all that Nick and I kind of have. We are very happy to kind of answer questions, both about how to use debate, as well as just like general college process stuff, because I know that like I had a lot of questions around this time. So if you want to just like put them in the chat, we can.
Do you want me to end the recording too so people can chat face to face, or should I keep it going?
I'm not, I think we can end the recording.
Okay, I'll end it and then we can have